Hi, I'd like to welcome everyone, all our viewers this evening. This is an Ardmore Tidy Towns community initiative, and we've decided to have what we'd probably call the off-the-wall sports Zoom call tonight. Uh, Hosting with me tonight is our St. Eckland's Club Chairman, Nicky Keating, and we've two guests with us who are a mind of sporting information. Oisin Langan, who everyone would know in the parishes of Ardmore and Grange. Oisin currently works in the sports marketing and sponsorship field, but he started his sports broadcasting career 17 years ago and has worked with WLR, KCLR, TIP FM, CKR, and in latter years, News Talk and Off the Ball. And currently, he still does commentary for BBC Northern Ireland. And our second guest, Ronan Quirke from Clonmel. Ronan has worked for TIP FM since 2002 and has presented the Extra Time Sports programme on Monday nights for the past 15 years. He has covered all sports on TIP FM in this time, from GA, rugby, soccer, athletics, horse racing, and everything in between. So tonight we're just going to maybe spend an hour trashing sporting events out. In sport, on this island we have a great passion for all sports and maybe one sport. And sport can be the story behind the story. And it gives us the good, the bad, and the happy and the sad all in one day. So I suppose it'd be remiss of us, Oisin, not to start with what we're still dining out on here in Ardmore, if we could dine out, is that famous Sunday night and the journey to it in our parish hall in Ardmore, when you were on stage welcoming back numbers 1 to 30 of that great panel. What was going through your veins that night as a local man?
Immense pride, a sense of disbelief, a sense of try and hang on to every single second of this, because this might only ever happen once, and there's no guarantee that even Waterford will win in All Ireland, be it in ladies football, camogie, hurling, Gaelic football, whatever. And there's no guarantee of any team you follow, be it like I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm a Cork City fan, obviously an Ardmore fan, a former Ardmore player, maybe someday in the future again, a current Ardmore player. You never know, the juniors might get that stuck. But it was just a case of, I can't believe we've done this. I'm just so glad we have done this. And let's just enjoy it, because who knows what's around the corner. And now we know what was around the corner. And it's horrible. And it's thinking back to those kind of nights that is keeping me going through this thing, that even if Ardmore don't do it again, someone will do it again. Someone will enjoy that kind of experience again. Or we'll enjoy going to matches, even matches that we haven't won. Like last summer I went to Ardmore matches and we didn't have a particularly good summer, but I still enjoyed going, because you got to see people you grew up with, you got to go out and see games, which you were very privileged to do last summer given so few people got to them. But it was just immense. It was probably one of the greatest days I've ever enjoyed as a sports commentator, as an Ardmore Grange person, and just as someone who follows sport. It was everything mixed in. It was the perfect storm, because I got to do commentary of the match in Croke Park, got to do a Champions League 99-esque kind of finish with Garton scoring that point, and I always confuse John and David, so I won't commit to who scored it. I got to do Carvery, which everyone knows I love, and met half of Ardmore at the Carvery, at the Putcheen still, and then went for another Carvery in Thomastown on the way home, and then just like every second was like floating on air being in Ardmore that night. And even afterwards, the house party that I ended up in, and I won't name names, no one ended up messy. It was just good fun, just people reliving the match, people reliving the season, and just spending time with people you knew who had achieved something that made them immortal and put Ardmore up there with all the greatest GA parishes in the country. It was just I'm still not sure I can actually put into words what that night meant to me, but everyone in the parish and everyone on that wonderful, wonderful team and squad, and everyone in that wonderful club. And we've good days and bad days, and that's the nature of sports, the nature of GA, especially a club like ours, which isn't huge and isn't guaranteed success, but like, you have to enjoy the success when it does come. And I think we really enjoyed it and still enjoy it when I look back. And even in work, when we were allowed in the office, my desk kind of artwork was not Dan Carter, it was not Lionel Messi, it was not Georgie O'Callaghan, one of my favorite soccer players who played for Cork City, it wasn't Thierry Henry. As an Arsenal fan, obviously he's a hero of mine. it was the squad picture of the lads celebrating after the All-Ireland final.
Nicky, it was pretty special, wasn't it, as you was a club man all your life and an officer?
Yeah, it was. And, listen to Oisin there, and you talk about the homecoming. And while you go to a final, the expectations are, yeah, we're going to win this. We're going to come home. We're going to celebrate this. But, I remember the whole setting up of the hall and getting it ready for the homecoming and done behind closed doors. And it was a matter of saying, do we have a homecoming irrespective of win, lose or draw? And, then the final whistle went. It was a quick text saying, okay, it's on, the cards are, and then it was
do I have enough voice left after that finish to perform at the homecoming?
Yeah,
was a major concern as well.
Yeah, and getting Oisin back and getting him up on stage and discussing the script on the way down. I actually look at the match every so often, and I listen to the Warford WLR commentary every so often as well, just to sit back, because here we are in a lockdown and things like that kind of keep you going. Look, it was special for many people. It was special for the club. It was special for people that have fought and dug the fur for many years in and out. And look, I think we all heard Clinton Hennessy on Warford Radio as well during the commentary, and I'm sure his heart would have been, he'd love to be down there, but his heart was down there and he was down there with the lads, and can't take away from what Seamus Prendergast has done for the club over the last years, and the young guys coming through, the James Flavins up there and young James Kennedy's, lads on the sideline looking in, like Seamus Cronin here, he is now one of our key players. So massive thing. And look, good days will come again. We're a small club, and I think everybody realised that. But we're in a good place still. So yeah, it was a special time. And to have Declan Prendergast come up those steps there and lifting something that he probably never ever dreamed of when he left the county, and there he did it with the club. So Aidan, and not to and to acknowledge all the fun of those weeks ahead and we had was just amazing.
Ronan, you had a similar experience in your community with Clonmel Commercials beating the big boys down in Nemo.
Yeah, and just before I come to that, just as an outsider looking in on the Ardmore story, what I think a lot of people around the country got from that was how sport is an awful cruel, at the high end, elite sport can be desperately cruel. And you don't always get what you deserve in sport, but to see Seamus Prendergast and Declan Prendergast back in Croke Park and winning in Croke Park. And they had great days in Croke Park. I'm sure they enjoyed 2008 All-Ireland semi-final against Tipperary. They had great days in that stadium, but nothing to match what they achieved by climbing the steps of the Hogan Stand and picking up a cup and picking up a medal. And I think you don't always get what you deserve in sport, but I think for those two stalwarts and two men who served their club and their county really well, I think it was really pleasing. I think that people saw that they got their just desserts, and to a certain extent, a lot of the younger lads, something to aspire to in the future and go back to. I think it's interesting. Oisin was able to put on an Ardmore hat for that commentary for that match, and if he was working for News Talk, he probably would have had to be a bit more nuanced than he otherwise would have been. And it was a bit, nobody tunes into WLR or nobody tunes into Tip FM to listen to unbiased commentary. They actually want a bit of bias. They want you to be parochial when you have to be parochial. And Clonmel Commercials, a club I would have played for and warmed the bench for many, many years for Clonmel Commercials. To see them in an All-Ireland club, in a Munster club final was a big deal. And then to take on Nemo with the likes of Tomás O'Shea was playing for them that day. They had a lot of the Cork senior panelists would have been playing for Nemo. And to be trailing by 2 points with time almost up and a long high ball sent in, Mikey Quinlivan gets it. I mean, it was pure Roy the Rover stuff, and catches it, ball falls, he just leathers it back of the net, we win by a point. I mean, those sort of days don't happen very often because you know all the players. In actual fact, when you get to my age, you actually, it's the players' fathers and mothers that you know better than the players themselves. And that is so, it's a sense of unity. And I know Michael Quinlivan's father very well, close personal friend, and you couldn't talk to him afterwards. The man was in bits. And I just think that when you're trying to relay that back to people who aren't there, when you're trying to give a sense to people who are sitting at home as to what that feels like, there's a huge burden of responsibility that falls on you to do it justice, but not to go over the top. And there's a balance that you have to find, because you can't shout and roar, and which is what you want to do. You want to F and blind to a certain extent as well, because it was roided over stuff. But you do have to try and sort of bring a sense of this is just truly historic. And I would imagine that, you know, there's two kind of things on your shoulders. There's the fan, and there's the quasi journalist who's trying to impart that back to the people at home. But those days are really special. They don't come along very often, and you really have to enjoy them when they do come along, because you might never see their like again. And I think that's a sense of community, a sense of parish, a sense, and we, like, let's face it, I come from a large-ish town, so the sense of parish wouldn't be as rooted as it would be in somewhere like Ardmore. It's more, you know, the rural nature of Ardmore lends itself to a parish ethos more so than in the town of Clonmel. But my God, I tell you, I felt like a small parish in Mallow that day.
Well done. Yeah, it was a big deal to beat the big guys of Nemo. Oisin, just to revert back to you, and you do a bit of work with AIB and the Toughest project, and I didn't know anything about that until Ardmore were progressing in the junior. But in that, you covered the Camogie Club Championship. And, you know, personally, I was delighted to be able to watch Camogie games in November during lockdown on TG Car. You know, I was lucky to have it, but like tough times on them, no attendance, no income. You know, how are those clubs and counties coping in Camogie?
Yeah, well, I work with a company called Wilson Hartnell, and we do sponsorship, and we do that in a lot of sectors, and sport is one of them, and AIB is one of our clients. Regards Camogie, like every other small country, parish or entity, they just find a way of doing it. They just find a way of getting through it. They just find a way to make it happen. And like even last year regards the club championship, and there's probably still a few provincial club championships that have to finish from last year, as there is in Gaelic football and hurling around the country. There's a few county championships. I'm waiting about 6 months now to cover a Cork county final, but they just find a way. And they've always, like, the thing is they've always put in the effort, they've always put in the work. Now they're having a light shone on them, and just looking at it from the AIB point of view, they've sponsored it for 6 years, and in the last couple of years they streamed games and streamed the All-Ireland Championship, provincial championships. They held a massive ceremony last year to award the club players of the year, as they did for the male counterparts in the football and hurling, and it got equal billing. This year, or 2020 I should say, there was supposed to be a ceremony, and if it had been a week later, we wouldn't have been able to hold the club championship ones for the men in hurling and football. We got away with it. Had it been a couple of weeks later that lockdown came in, we would have got the Camogie one done. Unfortunately, we didn't, but luckily enough, the All-Ireland final did get played out. The club final, Sarsfields against Schlockneil. Schlockneil were going for 4 in a row. Sarsfields stopped them. Hopper McGrath, the former Galway hurler, is their manager, and he had 3 daughters starting on the team and another one on the bench and another one to come. She was too young, she couldn't play. So to answer your original question, they find a way. You know, they get through it. They're
resilient.
Yeah, exactly. I'm delighted now that the coverage of, and not just Camogie, women in sport is evolving. And it's not where it should be, it's not where it needs to be. Like, I was part of the media for a long, long time. Did I do everything I could have? No, I didn't. I was better than a lot. No self-praise is no praise, but my record speaks for itself. But at least now there's an acknowledgement of it has been unfair and we need to get this right. And, you know, some men will argue, well, or some people will argue, well, you know, if there was crowds going, then you could understand giving a coverage or justifying it. Well, they've been left behind. They've been under-resourced, got none of the kind of the trimmings that many men's sports, not just GA, didn't, you know, got over the years. And therefore, a lot of the sport itself kind of fell behind. So now they have to catch up, and, you know, coverage will help that catch up.
Ronan, your programme on a Monday night would have a big listenership in the West Waterford catchment of Newcastle, 4 Mile Water, Ballymac, the Nair, Tourneen and Ballymullet. Yeah. So, like,
none of the important places, is what you're saying. Nowhere that matters.
So the story of Ballymacarbery, it's an unbelievable story, but is it recognised?
Not at all. I quick Google search before I came on. 39 county senior titles in a row.
Wow.
Senior, You know,
Yeah.
and I say this with the utmost respect. If they were men, they would be household names. If they were men, there would be documentaries made about them, and they would be the subject of Marty Morrissey down interviewing them every time they win a county senior title. It is probably, I mean, if you look in global sport, I'm not so sure that you can find anything to draw any comparison with.
Is it like the Dublin thing, Ronan? Is it that they're actually too successful? They're too dominant. Like I think with the
Oh no, I
All-Stars
mean
this
Dublin.
year-
Dublin get enough oxygen of publicity, Oisin.
No, but they don't get they don't get a whole pile of praise. Like no one is saying no. Like people say, yeah, they're good, but I don't think it's kind of rammed home exactly how good this Dublin team are. And that's
I think that's
misnomer as
fair.
well.
I think they're the greatest I've ever seen. And
but they don't
you know,
get the
we
love
enjoyed
because they're
Kerry.
too dominant. And is it the same for Ballymacarbery? They were too successful, and like you nearly need to lose a few for people to love you. And because they didn't do that, the love wasn't kind of generated. The connection.
So do you think people love Mayo football more than they love Dublin football?
Well, people love Waterford, and a lot of it is because of our tragic losses. Not tragic. Tragic's not the right word in the sporting context. But there's a love of Mayo and an interest in Mayo, and it's because they've come so close and they've lost. And it's a bit like all the best comedy characters. Steve Coogan has spoken about this. He plays Alan Partridge. I love Partridge. I follow Partridge in the same way people follow bands. You know what I mean? They follow the albums, whatever. I have all the books. And they love their character to be to have that kind of flawed, but also to have the ambition of success, but to never actually succeed. And it nearly makes you love that character even more. So when the team is so successful, it's kind of harder to love them. And that's not to take away from what Ballymac have done.
No, I think you made an interesting point, because I mean, Tom Brady was the most loathed sportsman in America when he was with the New England Patriots because they were so successful. He goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, wins his 7th, I think, Super Bowl, and now he's the most loved because he did it with a team of underdogs as opposed to the team that were so successful. I would make the point, though, that I firmly believe that if the Ballymac story was generated by men, then everybody on the island would be familiar with them. Because when Schlockneil had a really good run, and you referenced them earlier, when their men were active in hurling and football club and their ladies in Camogie, I think everyone knew of Schlockneil in a way that they don't know about Ballymacarbery. And I don't think that's fair. And I think that ladies sports have done a can't see, can't be initiative, which I think is great merit, because they're trying to say, like, you know, young fellas run around fields. We all did, and you wanted to be, I don't know what age you are, Oisin, maybe you wanted to be Pat Jennings, or maybe you wanted to be Graham Ricks. I don't know, maybe you're...
Well, I certainly didn't want to be Graham Ricks, Google it, but yeah, I wanted to be Packy Bonner. I am 40. Okay. That's your question. Yeah, there we go.
But you talk about Ballymac there, Ronan, but if you take it into context, bring it back into just to more, like, people talk about all-stars and football, and, you know, people saying that this person should have an all-star, that person should have an all-star. Mary O'Donnell has 4 all-stars.
That's right.
Football.
That's right.
You know.
Yep.
Our local girl. Yeah.
Our local girl. 4 all-stars. You know, has awards from ladies of foot. She was on the decade team, ahead of some big names in the ladies, and was picked at midfield in that.
Can you imagine how much an Australian club would have paid for her? Like, you see it now. Sinead Goldrick, who's a mate of mine, she actually used to work at WH. She's gone across. Lauren McGee, who I know from Kilmacud Crokes, my Dublin club. Yeah. They've and Mary probably could still do it, by the way. Easily the most skillful player I've ever seen or played with live, if you know what I mean. Because when we were all young, she would have played with the boys.
Absolutely.
And and it's only now I kind of look back and realize, wow, how good she actually, I was going to say was, but is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, it is interesting, as you say, the recognition. I mean, the amount of titles, senior county and All Ireland, was incredible. But just to move away slightly, Oisin and Ronan, I know you both had parts in broadcasting for the Ulster football final and the Munster football final this year, and they were huge days in our lockdown, and we were able to watch them, and it was so important. Oisin, were you commenting that day in Ulster?
I was doing it for BBC Radio Ulster, and Ronan referenced it, and he's absolutely right. When I did the Ardmore game, and it was for the DVD, which was to be released by Ardmore, I knew I could be completely biased and absolutely lose it, and I did. Only cats could hear me at some points. I was so high pitched. But for this, I obviously had to be neutral, and it was a great story. And it was weird. Towards the end of the game, I forgot that there was no crowd because we were sitting really near the Cavan subs. There was me, Enda McGinley, formerly of Tyrone, and Aoife, my girlfriend, who's also my stats person. And there's no surprise she's into sport because, well, first of all, I don't think she could go out with, and I don't think I could go out with someone who wasn't into sport. It just would not work. And we were introduced by Stephen Kenny. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we're both, where our minds are both at. We weren't really introduced by Stephen Kenny. We kind of were, but it's a good story. Anyway, and I just got completely carried away with it. And so intense was the game. So much was the noise coming from the Cavan subs that you forgot that there was no crowd. But to see what it meant to Cavan to end such a long way, to win at the end of such a strange year. And Cavan was hit really badly by COVID. And they'd been relegated to Division 3. And people were saying the Cavan greatness was very much in the past. And people were saying, this generation, not up to it. They're not going to deliver. They had good under 21 teams a couple of years ago. They haven't built it. They haven't done anything. So for them, it was just this release. It felt like just this release of pain when the final whistle went. And it was a real honor to do it and a real privilege to do it and a real just a special thing to see it up close. And it was hard on Donegal as well. And often people forget that we jump on the Cavan bandwagon and say, oh God, isn't this fantastic for them? And we do nothing but talk about Cavan. We kind of forget about the losers. And the fact that Donegal had won titles recently, I think it was 2 in a row or 3 in a row they were going for, 3 in a row in Ulster they were going for. That doesn't take away from their pain, and to see the shots of Michael Murphy, who I know pretty well, at the end, staying there and applauding Cavan, but you could see the hurt. That showed you that, if there's joy, there has to be pain. And Ronan has touched on it, he's right. There's bad days in sport, and I'm not sure the good days erase the bad days. But I think when you see it up close, you see what it means to these guys, because their life is this. They give everything up for this, and the sacrifices they make. So for them, if I can only imagine the hurt of losing when you put so much into something, or the joy of winning when you put so much into something. But yeah, it was just an absolutely phenomenal day.
Ronan, the whole historical value of the Munster final for Tipperary.
Yeah, I'll just come to that in a second. I'm just picking up on something Oisin said about, the hurt and the losers. I always remember Jimmy Connors saying that he hated losing more than he loved winning, that the depth of the emotion of losing was far deeper than the high of winning. And he never got the peak anywhere near the trough that losing gave him. And I think that maybe that drove him on, but maybe the highs of winning never offset the trough of losing. Anyway, yeah, I think this year, for 2 reasons, illustrated the joy of the provincial championship. And, it has knockers. I mean, the Leinster Football Championship doesn't set the heart racing. I don't think anyone, struggles to sleep at night wondering what's going to happen in next 2021's Leinster Senior Football Championship. But Tipperary winning a Munster title for the first time in 85 years with the Bloody Sunday jerseys, albeit behind closed doors, was an extraordinary moment. I mean, the highlight of my summer, obviously, and I think a highlight of most Tipperary people's summer, but just a great story. And, having people who soldiered for so long for Tipperary football, who never get their day in the sun, the likes of Pat Fox, Philip Austin, who don't necessarily, Conor Sweeney to a certain extent as well, although he's not as old as those other 2 lads, who just, they go to training, they're not playing in front of large crowds. Sometimes you might be playing in front of less than 2,000 people, while the hurlers have that at training sometimes. It just illustrated I've said it a couple of times, I'm going to stop saying it after this, but you don't always get what you deserve in sport. But on that day in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, we got what we deserved in sport. I was just sorry that all the kind of small cabal, the small family of the Tipperary football fraternity couldn't be there to celebrate with them. The jerseys, everything, it just was about as perfect a moment as you'll get in sport, because of the fact that an 85-year gap had been bridged, and that we were able to build on the success of 2011 when we won a minor title against a really good Dublin team. If you look at that Dublin minor team of 2011, when, John Small was only a sub, Brian Fenton couldn't make that team, Kieran Kilkenny was the star of that team, and we beat them in an All-Ireland minor final. And a lot of those players, even Colin O'Riordan coming back from Australia, he was on that minor team. He's back playing midfield for Tip that day. Yeah. Just the stars aligned, everything, the gods came together and just got us over the line. And and it's just a perfect sporting moment.
Kieran Kenny, what a waste of a good hurler.
Yeah, it's a bit like O'Callaghan. He can hurl a bit as well, and Dermot Connolly can hurl.
Yeah, I actually saw Dermot Connolly win an All-Ireland schools final against St. Flannan's 2006. I was driving home, and I think it was before Carlow was bypassed, and I was like, oh, there's a game in Dr. Cullen Park, so I'll knock in and see what it is. Like that's the kind of weirdo you're dealing with me. I'll see a crowd outside a GA ground, and I'll get curious and go in. But and this was before Twitter and whatever, so you couldn't just go, oh yeah. Went in and just said, like, who's your man? Like, who's this kid? And I was like, Dermot Connolly. And the guy said to me, even then he said he'll be taken by the footballers. Mm-hmm. But he was magic. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Nicky, I suppose the fact Tipperary won a Munster final this year, like there's an echelon of hierarchy in football at Munster, and Cork and Kerry are there, and there's the rest, Waterford, Tip, Clare, Limerick. And the amount of lads from our parish and our club who have suffered and served with the Waterford senior footballers, not forgetting that John Hennessy coached an under-21 team to a Munster title years ago.
Correct.
Gives everyone hope, doesn't it, Nicky?
Yeah, and do they put in the same effort as any county? Yes, they do. Do their managers do the same digging for players? Yes, they do. Waterford has strong football clubs, and we know where they are. And I look back in the past years and I see the work that Benji Whelan has done, and those footballers there. Of course, there's a massive growth for the hurling in this county, but I see the work that's happening at underage right now, even underage at county and at under 14 all the way it's up to under football. And I look at the great work that Gavin has been doing for the last 2 years between minors under 21s, trying to get lads interested. Like those footballers there, to say that there isn't 19, 20 footballers that can match up against, Division 3, Division 4. We've touched on a couple of times in promotions, but something is stalling it. And I know that the county board, from a county board meeting some weeks ago, there's new discussions around how can we generate interest and get young lads in getting back into the football scene. It is challenging, and I look to Ronan, what Ronan said there. We all watched that Tipperary game. That was absolutely amazing. And to say that there's not equal footballers of standard in Waterford, I genuinely think there is. But it's just it's a hard battle and a hard egg to crack.
One of the things that frustrates a lot of people, Nicky and Tip, is that you can have really, really good footballers who are called into the hurlers. In your heart of hearts, they're not going to make the hurling match day 26, and they waste 2-3 years as part of an extended panel. And we have a hurling extended panel. I don't know what the Waterford one's like, but Jesus Christ, we need 3 buses nearly by the time we've the panel of players, the extended panel, plus the backroom team. I mean, you've got 3 60-seater buses that you got to bring all these people with, and a lot of those lads having a snowball in hell's chance of making that Liam Sheedy's match day 26. And my God, would we have a job for them in the football panel if we could get their hands on them. And
there's more than enough lads. Like, we're a big enough county that we could have 2 relatively competitive teams. And what you have to do, and I don't want to kind of wade into the business of telling Waterford County Board what to do, because it's a tough job being in a county board, especially now. It's not easy, but you have to look at counties that have been successful. Like, there's nothing wrong with going down to Kerry and saying, right, what do you do? How do you get players interested? Because it's not like there's no players in Waterford. Like, every club nearly has a footballing entity. And yeah, some clubs will be more hurling than football. But you just look at what Kerry do, what Dublin do, and try and replicate it in as much as you can, or craft it to your county. And that sounds really easy when I say it. But like, if you work with a good development squad from like under 14 up to minor, and they get a rapport together and they develop a love of playing for their county, and then other lads will come in late, whatever. That's where you start. You probably can't start at a senior. Like, we're not in a year's time, no matter who we get in coaching, and Shane Stapleton is an excellent coach. We're probably not going to be like challenging to get into Division 2. If we get out of Division 4, that's a fantastic achievement. It has to be long-term. The thing is people are not patient. Like, and it's about trying to find someone in the county board who will say, right, I'm going to start this now, and in 10 years, we're going to have a really great team. And like, I'll use Dublin hurling as an example, and I know that seems like a really weird example because they haven't won an All-Ireland and they've only won one Leinster in recent times. But compare Dublin hurling now to where it was in even the early 2000s. When I started working in News Talk in 2004, the Dublin hurlers were fighting relegation from Division 2. Like, they were having battles with Kerry, who weren't much good at the time, battles with Wicklow, Derry, teams like this. Like, we're losing to Westmeath and Laois in the championship. Now, it'd be a very bad day if Dublin lost to Laois. I know they did last year, but that was an exceptional kind of exceptional result and an exceptional Laois team. But they're in Division 1. They regularly put it up to Kilkenny, almost beat them this year. You know, like, so
yeah,
it
they're
just put a lot of coaching.
They're bridesmaids a lot, you know. There's
They
a glass
are,
ceiling.
no, they are, Ronan, but they are now competitive and they're capable. Like, they beat Galway last year, the year before. But what they did was they just, from the bottom up, went in and put the work in. Now, exactly how they did that, I don't know, but it's worth looking at as a case study.
Thank you, Oisin. If we could move from amateur to pro sport, maybe, and we move to rugby. Oisin, I'll come back to a particular game that you worked on in a minute. But Ronan, could you explain to our viewers the whole debacle about the IRFU and the national anthem and what goes on in that space? Because I heard about it recently.
We had this discussion recently, and I suppose, you know, you start by saying it's a 32 county team, and there is no one anthem for a 32 county team. And the constitution of the Irish Rugby Football Union dictates that only when Ireland play in the 26 counties can our Own Levine be played. Now, it's very rare that they play outside of Dublin, but 99.9% of the time they play a home game in Dublin and they play our Own Levine. But they're in the constitution. If Ireland were to play in Ravenhill, then God Save the Queen would be played as the Irish national anthem. Now, that has caused problems in the past where some players Irish players refused to come out of the dressing room in the 50s until God Save the Queen had ended. And I think Des Fitzgerald refused to play in Ireland B International in Ravenhill in 1982. At the height of the Troubles, because God Save the Queen was going to be played as the anthem for the Irish team. Now, this came to a head. Years ago, I used to live in England and we used to regularly go down to Twickenham when Ireland were playing there. And it often came up, people beside you would go, how come you don't have an anthem? Because when Ireland played abroad, no anthem at all was played. So it was our Own Levine in Dublin and nothing when we played in Twickenham, Murrayfield, Parc de France, or the Cardiff Arms Park, nothing. So this bemused a lot of people, and it came to a head when the Rugby World Cup started back in 1987 in New Zealand. And Donal Lenihan, I think, was he captain in 87? Doesn't really matter. But he got a bit annoyed about the fact that we wouldn't have an anthem. So we were going to play Japan or something, and there was no anthem for us because under the constitution of the IRFU, our Own Levine could not be played outside of the 26 counties. So they used the Rose of Tralee. They used a tape recording of the Rose of Tralee as our anthem, and the sound quality was terrible. It was like an old cassette tape that somebody had in the back of their car, and that was what they used. And this was embarrassing. In 91, we played most of our matches in the World Cup in 91 in Dublin, apart from one in Murrayfield, where no anthem was played at all. So it had to be resolved by the time the World Cup in 1995 came along. And they approached Phil Coulter, and he came up with this thing, which he presumably wrote on the back of a beer mat or something, Ireland's Call. And that has been our rugby anthem ever since. And other sports have adopted that. I think hockey used it as well, even though, believe it or not, our Own Levine, I think, was played in Rio when the Irish hockey team qualified for the Olympics, the ladies hockey team. So it's a thorny one, and you mightn't like what Ireland's Call represents, or you mightn't like it as a piece of music, but it's better than the Rose of Tralee, and it's an Irish solution to an Irish problem is probably the best way of describing it.
Unfortunately, yeah. It's real. The fact we have a 32 county sport, and if you look at our soccer team, it's divided 26 and 6. Actually, I'll just transgress there, Oisin, because we'll go back to a rugby game in a minute that you were involved in, but your game in Windsor Park, that's not where a southern accent is welcome. Am I right?
I was very welcome.
Right?
I wouldn't have gone walking around there outside the stadium maybe, but that's why I put it in the list when we had our chat yesterday. Because Windsor Park was built up in my head over the years. And of course, we all remember 1993 and Billy Bingham winding up the crowd, just this toxic atmosphere. But this was 2004 or 5 by the time I got there. I'd never been to Northern Ireland, right? And like now I'm not up there every weekend now because obviously COVID, but I cover an awful lot of Ulster Championship, and I would do a bit of work for BBC and even IFA's like throw a stone and you're over the border. So I'm in Newry quite a lot or whatever. But up until then, I'd never been to the north, and it was kind of built up in my head that the north was up there. It was away. Like it was like I can get to Belfast quicker than I can get to Grange. But even living in Dublin, it was like up there, it's away. So I went up there to cover a Setanta Cup game, a now defunct competition where Irish League teams in the north played League of Ireland teams in the south. And I was just really nervous about Windsor Park and really kind of curious about this place because to me, it was always somewhere that, you know, I wasn't welcome. I wouldn't belong. And when I went in there, I just realized that, you know, people would say hello and you'd be like, oh, what, you know, what's behind that hello? And after a while, you realize, well, actually, these are just football people. You know, this is just a football stadium. And that's when I kind of, when I realized that sport is it was a lesson in life because it was like a sport is an equalizer. Sport can bring people together, and like Ronan's mentioned it there, we're a 32 county team in rugby, and that's great. And yeah, there's the little quirks and issues over Ireland's call and all that. Quite frankly, I'll take those quirks and issues so long as we can get on. And you have to. One thing I've learned as well in just walking around Belfast and spending a good bit of time in Belfast, our Irish, the four of us are pretty. You know, we see Irish as being a very simple thing. We're Irish, and that's how we see it. And you know, we the tricolour is our flag, and the Taoiseach is our leader, and you know that's what being Irish is to us. Being Irish to someone in Belfast can be something very different, but they're still Irish, and it was great to get an understanding of that. So that's why that game in Windsor Park kind of stands out to me because it was the start of something, and like I became very curious about this big area of the island that I'd heard about all my life and always wanted to reclaim. I mean, I was quite a Republican teenager. I'm not as Republican anymore. I'm not like I'm not. I won't say I've softened my view. I get that it's very nuanced, and being Irish is not just one thing. Being Irish is you know it's different things to different people, and you have to respect the different views, and that kind of evolution and growth all came from going to Windsor Park that night. I got very curious and I kept going back and like even like I started covering Ulster football games in like 2014, 2015 because I'd always take the Munster hurling game as an option. And I said, you know what, Ulster football is a blind spot to me and I know how much Ulster football means to Ulster football people. So I started picking those games sometimes over hurling games, never Waterford, but sometimes because I felt I needed that, you know, vision and I needed to I suppose have that growth mindset to see why this means so much to these people and to learn about it. And, you know, and like that all kicked off from going to Windsor Park at that time.
You know, you always learn something and every day is a learning day. But what I've learned there is that Windsor Park is far more welcoming than Cusack Park in Ennis. I mean, there's some shower. I mean, mother of God, you rock in there with a Tipperary jersey, or you go in and you say you're working for Tip FM, and you may as well have the plague. You know,
Ronan, do you know what the secret is there? Do you know what the secret is there? I learned very early on because I get on well with Davy Fitz, right? Get on well with Pat. And you have the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, I know, but like you have to shake hands with. Oh no, can't be dealing with that shower at all. I'm absolutely all for a 31 county republic. I think it'd be great.
Going back to, I said at the top of the hour that sport gives us some sad days as well, especially when an icon that we followed in their career who's still playing passes away suddenly, doesn't get to reap the rewards of their toils on a pitch. And you had to work on a match on a very sad day in rugby.
Yeah, the day after Anthony Foley's funeral, Munster played Glasgow in a Heineken European Cup game. And I have to say, even on the way down to it, I was like, I don't think they should be playing this game. But it wasn't so much the game that I remember, it was the outpouring of love for Anthony Foley. And just the noise and the atmosphere that day. And I guess it seems silly because to Anthony Foley's family, it didn't matter what the result was. It didn't matter what the noise was. It didn't matter what people said. They had lost their brother and they'd lost their son and they'd lost their husband. They'd lost someone very dear to them. And there was nothing going to make up for that. But just the outpouring towards him was just something spectacular. And I don't think I've ever experienced anything like it before or since. And it's always stood out to me. And even at the end of the match, the Munster players, I think it helped them get through it. That, you know, the fact that the crowd were able to show them love and support, and at the end of the game, them in a circle singing "Stand Up and Fight" was very, very special. And I think it helped them. I hope it gave Anthony Foley's family strength. And look, it was just a standout day.
Yeah, there's two sad events when someone passes away as well. If I can change tack maybe on sport again, Waterford and Tip, we share a border. Carrick and Shore straddles the border. I don't know what's in the water down in Carrick, but what cyclists? I mean, you know, we had such enjoyment this summer with Sam Bennett and what's gone on previous. Ronan, what's special about Carrick and Carrick Wheelers, and what happens down there?
Well, I think Carrick is a unique town. Let me start off by saying that for starters. I mean, whenever Carrick are in any competition, don't ever bet against them. If you're ever playing the Swan in a hurling match, you know what's coming. And if you're playing Carrick United in a soccer match, Jeannie Mac, you know what's coming. You never bet against Carrick in a final. That's one rule that I always follow in life. Never bet against Carrick in a final. I would say Kelly was a unique person, and you know, he identifies as a Waterford man, but he had a lot of love in Tipperary as well. And you know, the Nissan Classic in '85 stands really out in my memory particularly because of the time trial, where there's a 20k or 15k, I think it was, between Carrick and Clonmel, and he covered that so fast that it stood as an international time trial record for 5 years after that. And Kelly wasn't a noted time trialist. Roach was a much better time trialist, as evidenced by the time trial in '87 that propelled him into yellow and ultimately to winning the yellow jersey in the Tour de France. But Kelly beat Roach up a stick that day in that time trial, which finished on the streets of Clonmel. So he started off in Carrick, and the place was absolutely mobbed in what's now Sean Kelly Square. And then he comes into Clonmel, the place absolutely mobs, smashes the time trial, and the place goes bananas. And that's your heroes coming home. You know, this great Waterford man who was off doing his thing in France, and that year I think he'd finished 4th in the Tour de France and had won Paris-Nice and had won a couple of the one-day classics early in the season, and he still found time to come and deliver this phenomenal performance on the Waterford Tipperary border, an extraordinary occasion. And then fast forward to this year when Sam Bennett wins on the Champs-Elysees, the greatest moment for a sprinter to win on the Champs-Elysees, win the points jersey. The first time an Irishman had been in green, and another Carrick on Shore man in green X years after Sean had won it all that time ago. It was a really stunning moment. And in this truncated sporting summer, you know, there's been highlights. Waterford's second half performance against Kilkenny, that was an extraordinary 35 minutes of hurling, got you out of your seat. And I'm a Tipperary man. That got me out of my seat. Tip winning the Munster Munster Senior Football Final, and Sam Bennett winning on the Champs-Elysees. These are extraordinary moments, extraordinary events. And it always bothers me when I see Sam Bennett, you know, being on the news or being reported on in the national media, where they always say, well, he's 127th on general classification. And you feel like screaming at the television and say, well, he's not a GC rider. And then you realize that most people who are reporting on cycling don't know what you mean by he's not a GC rider. He's a sprinter. It's a bit like saying that Usain Bolt was a very ordinary athlete because he never won the marathon. He's never going to win the marathon. He's never going to win a yellow jersey. He is primarily a sprinter, and he is absolutely one of the top 3 sprinters in the world in a sport that is extremely tough. And to be a sprinter in cycling, you need to have nerves of steel, the speed they're going at, the confined space, the gaps they're trying to get themselves through, and the tactics and the, you know, your split second decision making. You need to know when to go, whether that gap is opening enough for you to go get through it. I wouldn't swap places. I think they earn every penny they earn. They earn every penny of it, because it is an extraordinary sport, and we have somebody from our border who is performing at the very, very highest level.
I must admit that climb out of Carrick and Shore would build any guy to be a cyclist, you know. So you can imagine.
Seskin Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of my DNA on that hill.
I had a few cars that barely made it up that hill, let alone fights.
Of course, Ronan and Oisin, the thing about the prize money with the teams, and he's with Devon Check Quickstep, it's all split evenly down to, am I right, masseuses, doctors.
I don't think, well, certainly the team split it, but like Bennett wouldn't be anything without that fella Markov, the Danish rider, who minds him like a baby and just literally caresses him into position and then says, right, after this, it's up to you. I mean, he wouldn't be anything if it wasn't for that Danish rider Markov, who does all of the heavy lifting and the hard grafting. I mean, to be to be a team rider on, not one of the superstars, to be a domestique, which is what they're called. You've got to go back and get the dinner. You got to go back and you give your bike to somebody and then go back and get a spare tire. I mean, it really is tough, really, really tough.
But Nicky, I suppose from your point of view, and you're involved in the club administration here, albeit on a voluntary basis, do people look at that sport and say, is it drug free now? We had the Tour de France pass by our door in '97. Chris Boardman came off at the bridge. They had a strike when they got back to France. Is it still tainted? You asked the question.
Look, we read the books and we read the articles. We do things voluntary in our own communities. Look, the media is going to pump it up as being something, but yet we watch it. We watch the Armstrongs and we watch these guys doing the impossible. So look, you could look at many sports, you say what's inside in the DNA. But you're looking at Bennett there, you spoke there about the grafters, it's a bit like rugby, your forwards and your backs, you've got some of the guys doing the donkey work, and then you got the sprinters coming along. But I don't know, Aidan, I think it is being cleaned up. There was suspicion and we all read it and we all had our own opinions on it. But then when you take that into the amateur sport of hurling and football, and you look at the effort that these guys are putting in on a voluntary basis as well, and 5-6 nights a week, pushing the body to the limits, lifting, running, and even at club level, guys are doing it at club level. So it's you look at the sport, you look at cycling and say, is it being cleaned up? And I would say yes, I think it is. And the Sam Bennett thing was special to look at this year, and to look at him come down the Champs-Elysees, and again, no spectators, but special moments, a special summer with sport. And the second half with the Kenny run was very good.
Oisin, switch sports again. Tell us what was special for you about Dundalk batting Borisov Champions League.
I'm a big League of Ireland fan. Cork City, which I know people will think is odd considering we're from Waterford, but I really only started following League of Ireland when I lived in Cork and worked in Red FM and just grew an affinity for the club and whatever. But for many years, people slagged off League of Ireland. And a lot of it justified. A lot of the stuff that League of Ireland clubs did was just utter madness and stupidity. So they only have themselves to blame for a lot of it. They were mismanaged from the top. They didn't get enough assistance from the FAI. They didn't get enough assistance from the government. But ultimately, a lot of them didn't manage themselves right, and they only have themselves to blame. So I kind of ignore a lot of the whinging from League of Ireland clubs and whatever. But there is a lot of people who put a lot of effort in, and there is a lot of good people who follow it, and there's a lot of it's just, I think because it's local to you, it means a bit more. Like following a Cork City win would mean a lot more to me than an Arsenal win, because I know I can, in normal times, go to the game, chances are chat to the players afterwards, even if you weren't working, even if I wasn't commentating, whatever. And people, I think because of all the stuff League of Ireland had done to undermine itself, people don't give it a chance, or they kind of look down on it. And even they'll watch Watford against Reading, or they'll watch Burnley against whoever, another random town that I've never been to and don't care about, and they'll bang on about it because it's hyped up, but it's the Premier League. But football is football to me. And I just love going to football. So I follow the League of Ireland, and this was a big night because it meant so much for Dundalk to win that game, because if they won it, they were guaranteed at the very least to get into the group stages. Now I know of the Europa League. Now I know Shamrock Rovers had done that before, but Dundalk are, you know, a relatively small provincial club in a very, in a you know, a small town compared to Dublin, a small town. And Stephen Kenny, he's a guy I had an awful lot of time for. I thought he was mistreated by Shamrock Rovers. I think he'd done great things in the game. And it just, for League of Ireland followers, to watch a team dismantle Bate Borisov, which they did on the night, who were in the Champions League group stages at one stage, and to earn the respect of footballing people, that was a huge deal. And they did it playing good football, good players. And it was an emotional night because it wasn't just Dundalk winning, it was our league winning. It was years of pain being released, and like all the questions weren't answered that night. There's still issues, but it, like, you can nearly track a big improvement in the league back to that. And I know, and again, I know Shamrock Rovers had made it a couple of years before, but to me that didn't mean as much, because it made, like, I really don't mean to disrespect them. They were handed a stadium. They had so many advantages, but for Dundalk to do what they did, it was just amazing. It was amazing to be there as well, and you get drawn in by these things, and it was just a very, very special night. But what made it great was, like, if I went and covered Arsenal and interviewed Lacazette after the game, I'm sure he wouldn't offer me a lift home if he thought I was stuck. One of the lads, Phil Egan, a buddy of mine who works for Off the Ball, I was talking to Kieran Kilduff, who was a striker, and he said, he said, Kieran, thanks for the interview. He said, I'm going to run and catch a bus. Kilduff says, where are you living? And Phil said, Greystones. He says, I'm heading that way. I'll give you a lift. You know, after qualifying for the Europa League group stage. It was just a very special night, and it's one that stands out.
Oh, Shane, just on League of Ireland, like sustainability, League of Ireland in this era, like attendances, you know, financing it, you know, you'd wonder how does it sustain year in year? I look at it, and I do watch League of Ireland when it's on TV, not to the same extent as you, Oisin, but I just sit back sometimes saying, how does it sustain this? So I know the FAI there were a lot of questions there at the time and the past years, but how do some of the lower teams keep going and bringing players in, be it aged or whatever they are?
Well, for some of the first division teams, they do it on an amateur basis. For some of the Premier League teams, they work hard to get sponsors. They have a lot of season ticket holders. They have a lot of people who support them. Like, for example, I signed up for 4 different clubs' Patreon accounts just to support them. And you get something for it. Like, you get like old game footage and stuff like that, which I always find really interesting. You also make money, but like if you're smart in how you do your business, like Shamrock Rovers, again, there's a lot to be admired about Rovers and what they do, by the way. Like Gavin Bazuna going off to Man City, they'll make a ton of money out of that. Clubs that are smart enough, like Cork City, I know they had to sell on one of the clauses of Shawnee Maguire's contract, but they could have made an awful lot of money out of that. They did make some, but maybe not as much as they could have. But clubs, if they're smart and they lock in players to contracts or tie them down or have something to do with their development, they'll make money. Like Bohemians made a lot of money out of Matt Doherty being sold to Spurs. So there's that. There's a couple of different revenue streams. And because they all now have academies and underage teams, they have more chance of developing players. And that was really important for League of Ireland teams, because in the past, a lot of the time it was like the first team was the club. And I don't think you could build a club like that. But yeah, that's how they sustain it. They don't get a whole pile of money for TV. They get nothing for a TV interesting, you know.
Yeah, just locally now, a lot of interest in the past 12 months when we see Sean Byrne signing up with Cove Ramblers, you know, and taking a role there and performing in some.
And should have been signed by Cork City. Like, I watched Sean in a couple of games, and like I covered a game that they played against Drogheda. Drogheda got promoted, and Drogheda are a great team, and a mate of mine, Kevin Doherty, is their assistant coach. And Cove beat them that night. Sean saved the penalty. And when he signed for Cove, I'm not sure even he realised he'd get the run he did. And then he kept the other lad out, who I think has now signed for Cork City. I couldn't believe that City didn't go in for Sean this year. But yeah, like Cove are a good example of how to do it at the moment. They pay their players, but they don't pay them too much. Not enough in Sean's case, because he's excellent. But yeah, it's just like, you know, you run a club, so it's just about, if you only have 20 quid, don't promise someone 30 quid. And that's what League of Ireland clubs have done down the years, and it's cost them. And I hope that they now have copped on not to do that anymore.
You know, it's a community as well.
The odd time I go into Turner's Cross, you look at the facilities are excellent. Like it's a good place to go. And I often wonder, how can this not work? But ultimately, I think the answer why it doesn't work is that there's far too many fellas at home watching West Brom against Fulham and have no real skin in the game, and they don't walk a half a mile down to Turner's Cross to watch a local team. And until such time as you get people off their sofas who are watching a meaningless mid-lower table match on TV and get them into their local club. I mean, Ardmore is nothing without the locals coming in to see them, and Cork City will be nothing. The people of Inchicore have to go to St. Pat's. The people of Phibsborough have to go into Bohemians. And until such time as that happens, I don't know how you're going to fix it.
And you look at the GA model for that is what I would do if I was a League of Ireland club, right? How do these clubs build affinity?
Well, they did it with Tala, didn't they? I mean, Shamrock Rovers were Milltown. They were sort of south inner.
They were everywhere.
They've gone out to southwest.
They were everywhere.
Yeah, they were nomadic. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what you do. Like, and it's another real bugbear I have. League of Ireland people saying, "Oh, the GA people saying," and I hate that term, GA people saying, "Oh, League of Ireland." There's no such thing. I think like you like I'm a sports person and I follow them all. And I think, that's the great thing about Ireland. You can follow multiple sports, whereas in England, people tend to be either one or the other. They tend to be rugby or soccer or whatever. But you have to, like League of Ireland clubs, what they've never done is they've never long-term planned. They've never said, right, how do we make this sustainable? In fairness, a lot of them are doing it now, and social media helps that. Like Bohemians are fantastic at building that kind of affinity. And they've reached out to what I will call, I suppose, the new Irish, or people who are recently arrived in Ireland. And they've reached out to direct provision centres, which is outstanding. And you just have to build that affinity. And in fairness, they're all doing it now because they have to. It's kind of built into the rules of what you have to do as a club. But it'll take time. And Turner's Cross is a fantastic facility, but Oriel Park, it's a kip. It's an utter. Now I love it. It generates a great atmosphere, but you're only going to go if you're interested. You're not going to go if you're a floating voter. And that's what League of Ireland needs to do next. They need to get those floating voters, because in sport, and I know this from marketing myself in my day job, there's a certain hardcore support that you'll always have, but you need those floating voters. You need the flirts, as we call them. And rugby is a great example of it. Like, you'll see it when Ireland are going well, you'll get the flirts, you'll fill out the Aviva. Soccer, great example of it, the international team. You'll fill the Aviva with flirts for a friendly or a qualifier if they're going well. If they're not, you'll find it hard. You'll sell 20,000 to your hardcore, but that's about it,
I'm conscious of the fact, gents, that we're approaching the hour mark. I want to cover one more story, and in the end, then we're going to ask you both for your pinch me moments in the sport. But the last story I want to cover, Rowan, you've done a bit of research on this, the St. Louis Olympics 1896. It's a bit of a fairy tale story, isn't it?
It kind of is, because it's a fella from Ballyneal, which is in the parish of Grange Mokler, and people will know Grange Mokler because that's obviously where Tom Hogan killed in Bloody Sunday, 1921 would know. And so Tom Kiley was an athlete who tried to make his way to the St. Louis Olympics in 1896, and the Brits offered to pay for him provided he'd represent the United Kingdom, of which, like it or loathe it, Tom Kiley was a citizen of the United Kingdom at the time, and he wouldn't. So he sold everything he had really to get to St. Louis to represent Ireland. And he did represent Ireland in what was then called the all-round event and is now the modern decathlon. And he won it because he was an outstanding sportsman. And he, but then it came to the medal ceremony and what flag would be raised. And Tom, being a good man from Grange Mokler, wanted the tricolour raised, but Ireland wasn't an independent state at the time, and the Brits, who were very influential with the International Olympic Committee, were having none of it, and they wanted the Union Jack raised. And this led to a bit of a standoff, and he had one guy who didn't have an International Olympic Committee or an Olympic Council of Ireland fighting his corner. He was fighting his own corner against the weight of the British Empire, essentially. And he a compromise had to be reached. And eventually the flag that was raised was a kind of a flag of shamrocks, green shamrocks on a white background. And he got his gold medal. And I love the story because it just illustrates a farmer. That's all he was, a farmer from Ballyneal in South Tipperary, standing up to what he would have seen as his oppressor, but standing up to a highly influential body within the international Olympic community at the time and winning. and winning and coming back home. And at the time, Maurice Davin, one of the founders of the GAA, who was in Hayes' Hotel that night in 1884, had organised this massive homecoming for him in Carrick-on-Shore. And there was bonfires lit and all the rest. And he got off the train in Feathert, and he came across on a horse and cart with his Olympic medal, and he is approaching Carrick-on-Shore, and he gets word that there's going to be this big fanfare for him. He gets off the horse and cart and goes across the fields and goes home. The horse and cart comes into Carrick, and Tom Kiley's not on it because he just didn't want any fanfare. He just got off the horse and cart, went home, and Maurice Davin is standing on the back of, I don't know, a lorry of whatever the 1896 equivalent of standing on the back of a lorry is, and no Tom Kiley, because absolutely didn't want any fanfare, and just went home, milked the cows. And I just think an extraordinary story of a man who stands up to the British Empire in St. Louis, about as far away as he is ever going to be from home, wins his Olympic gold medal and brings it back. Superstar.
Where's that medal now, I wonder?
Where's the flag?
Exactly. Where's the flag?
I'd love to know where the flag is, because actually, incidentally, people who know Pat O'Callaghan, who won Ireland's first Olympic medal in 28 in Amsterdam, Ireland's first as an independent country, and then backed it up by retaining it in 32, and was the leading thrower in the world in the hammer in 36, which was the great games in Germany and Berlin, the Nazi, Hitler's Olympic Games in Berlin. But Ireland didn't send a team to the Olympic Games in 36, and Pat, throwing badly, would have won the Olympic Games in 36, but didn't go because no Irish team went to 36. And he would have, if he had gone, would have been in a very elite band of people who had won 3 Olympic Games gold medals in the same sport in consecutive Olympics. Very few people have done it. A couple of Cuban boxers have done it, but very, very few. And so his son went to the 72 games in Munich. Very interesting guy to talk to, because the Irish team were placed right beside the Israelis in alphabetical order in the Olympic Village. And so the Irish team had a bird's eye view of that Black September group coming in, capturing the Israeli athletes and all that standoff with the German police. Very interesting guy to talk to. But he accepted the Irish flag on behalf of the Irish team at the closing ceremony, because apparently their flag is taken down and presented to the team. So he brings the flag back to Clonmel and gives it to the mayor of Clonmel. And that Irish tricolour is flown outside the town hall in Clonmel for a week after the Olympics in 1972. And nobody knows where that flag is now. I would love to know where that flag is now.
Unreal. Listen, gents, we're coming to the end of our Off the Wall podcast. So, Oisin, your pinch me moment, and God, I can't believe I'm here working on this live sports event or something of that nature.
Look, there's absolutely no question. It's Ardmore winning the All-Ireland title. Everything in life is local. If Waterford ever win a senior All-Ireland, especially now that Seamus is in the squad and will score that winning point, or back in the squad, I should say, that might surpass it. But I don't think I've ever been happier at any sporting event. Ireland-Germany is very, very close. Shane Long scoring. And honestly, that night I went to watch Mats Hummels, because I would be a very bad defender in both hurling and soccer. And I was just curious to see how he moved on the pitch and what he did. And I always love going and watching players up close. And sometimes if I'm not working at a match, I'll just go to watch a player to see how they move around. So I was going that night to watch the German players, and Ozil being an Arsenal fan. But that night was special. But no, Ardmore, like your own club, winning in Croke Park, capturing the All-Ireland final, capturing the All-Ireland title. Talking to Declan Prendergast and him saying afterwards, I didn't know if I'd ever win an All-Ireland. I thought the chance was gone. And seeing what that meant to him, and what that meant to Seamus and everyone else, that was pretty special. It was kind of tinged with a little bit of sadness as well. And I'll tell you why. Because I'm of that age group of Seamus and Declan. And I kind of thought to myself, if I wasn't an idiotic messer in my late teens who fell in love with smoking and drinking, I'm fitter now than I was then, because I was on 20 a day and just boozing way too much. Haven't touched a drop since 2005, but too late to rescue any kind of career. But I kind of thought to myself, could I have been out there? Could I have been part of this squad? But it was just such... But like, that's a question more than a tinge of regret. It just primarily, it's 99.9% joy of what they achieved. And even now talking about it, it's kind of making me filling me up with kind of good feelings.
Ronan, yourself?
I don't think any of you wanted me to talk about Tipperary winning Senior All-Ireland hurling
Okay,
titles.
go there.
They'll all just tune out if I go on to that. So I'll park those, but they are great, by the way. If you ever get a chance to do those, they're super. But I think Munster getting over the line against Biarritz to work on that in the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, because there's so many near stories, having lost 2 finals before that, having been robbed in semi-finals as well, and just always being the nearly man of European rugby for that, and the band of supporters who, some of them flirts maybe that Oisin would call them, but there was a lot of loyal diehards who had gone all over Europe with that team, and to see them get their just desserts on that day. And nobody, I think the thing that I'm sure it was the same in Croke Park that day for Ardmore, nobody wanted to leave. That was the thing about the stadium in Cardiff that day when Munster won that European title. People stayed for a good hour afterwards. The stadium was still packed with Munster supporters. The Biarritz lads had all gone, don't get me wrong, but the Munster fans just didn't want to leave. They just wanted to stay there singing for as long as was humanly possible, until such time as they literally kicked us out. About 60,000 Munster fans were ultimately kicked out of the stadium because nobody wanted to leave. And those are the moments that you're going to stay, because I didn't want to leave. You know, you have to file copy, you got to get audio, you got to go to press conferences, you got to hang around, as Oisin will tell you, hang around for what seems like an eternity for players to show up and try to get them in some sort of a mix zone and stick a camera or a microphone in front of them to get some sort of audio that you can send for the headlines the following morning. But nowhere did you want to be. You want to be back up in the stands singing. And that was a moment that I'll remember for a long time.
Nicky, you were there that day, were you?
I actually was. And when you talk about it, Ronan, I got a ticket. I tried to get a ticket for that game. And on the Wednesday, a friend of mine in Manchester got me 2 tickets. And the plan was that all we could get was a boat from Oslear. So we went on the Thursday morning. My son and I, Seamus, got to Fishguard, went to London. My brother came up from London, back to London, and back up to Cardiff. But we could not stay in the stadium afterwards because we had to get a train from Cardiff back to Fishguard, get back to Rosslare and get home, all in. But yeah, there was a special. I was in the corner when Trevor, was it Halstead? Wasn't it Halstead?
Yeah, Trevor Halstead.
Yeah, I just in that corner there, and I just remember being the guys above us were the guys who were get the beer in the bar, and they were handing down little plastic cartons of beer to us. Heineken, sorry, yeah, Heineken. And I remember that day. That was a special day. But there's just one small thing that stands in my mind, and it goes back to Oisin's point there about Ardmore winning the All-Ireland. And the thing that sticks in my mind is that those last seconds of full time when St. Mo's got that free, and the one thing that was going through my mind was that ball cannot fall to the ground, because if that ball falls to the ground, this game is over. And I just can picture Declan Prendergast putting up his hand and clawing that ball out of the sky, and that wasn't going to ground, you know, and he got a free out. That's the point of what David did. Fantastic of the Gartlands. Oisin, okay, was David. But that point really stands out in my mind, that that ball cannot go to deck, and the man that was hoping to get up to the Hogan stand and did with his club was the man that actually plucked the ball out of the sky and held onto it, and so that's what stands in my mind. But yeah, Biarritz, special day, special week, a couple of days with my son on those travels. Yeah.
I'll say 2 things. One, I think I confused Stephen and Seamus earlier on. What is it with me and brothers in this parish? But it must be an Ardmore Grange thing, because people still say, "How are you, Shane?" to me, and like, no, that's my brother, and we look nothing alike. Yeah. We ignore him. He married a Cork woman. He's out of the family. I'm only messing. Carmen's a lovely girl. Glen Rover's connected actually, and all that jazz. But anyway, I remember when Declan won that ball, and I thought the same thing. And even when David got the ball, and like the odds weren't with him to shoot from there. And maybe it's because I still had Johnny Sexton in my head, because I had been in Paris the night before for the drop goal, the drop against France. And I just thought, as soon as he got the ball, I said, he's going to shoot and he's going to score. Like, it wasn't a doubt in my mind, and he did. It was amazing. There's always that day, like, little things kind of come into your mind about it, because there were so many things happened and it meant so much. One of the funnier moments was at halftime, I got a text from a buddy of mine who's a photographer, but who also plays for Kilmacud Crokes. And he sent me a picture of Tommy Cronin, and he said, "Why is he wearing wellies in Croke Park?"
Yeah, well, he's lucky. He said it. He's lucky wellies.
And they worked.
Yep.
And they worked. And Ronan,
Yeah.
speaking of Tipperary, and they're all Ireland's, and of course we wouldn't begrudge them. But Adrian Ronan, the former Kilkenny forward, great guy, gas guy. I done a few games with him in KCLR and whatever. And he was having a few hops off Tip one day. And I said it to him at halftime. I said, "Adrian, you know, what's the story with you and Tip?" I said, "I know you're rivals, but geez, you need to calm down a bit here." And he said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I have great time for Tipperary and all their 1-in-a-row teams."
Oh God, listen to that. Okay, on that note,
yeah.
on that note, it's around an hour and 10, just over. Oisin and Ronan, it has been a pleasure because you're a mind of information, both of you, and that's
Absolutely.
obviously in your line of work as sports broadcaster. It has been a pleasure. Nikki, thanks for co-hosting with me. I'd like to thank you all for your time. I'd like to thank the Ardmore St. Declan's GA Club who given us a platform, and primarily Ardmore Tidy Towns, who created this initiative it's because we're in lockdown number 3, it's for inclusion of our people, our friends of Ardmore, our population, the dual parishes of Grange and Ardmore, to interact with us all. And, you know, thanks to the committee, Ardmore Tidy Towns, hard-working, small committee, all voluntary, would always like more volunteers. But, you know, I'd like to thank the National School, where our principal, Lindsay, who facilitated the Zoom. And to our viewers, when they view this, please give us your comments, because there's a lot more here. We haven't got through half what the information I have here. So look, Ronan, Oisin and Nikki, thank you all so much. And we'll get this up as soon as possible, okay?
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Stay safe.
Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.